A gentle mist hangs over the quiet medieval countryside, the kind that softens every outline and turns the distant treetops into pale shapes against the morning sky. It is early, very early, the kind of hour when the world has only just begun to stretch awake, when birds have started their first curious chirps and villagers lift their shutters with slow, practiced motions. And so we begin our long, peaceful journey into the kitchens of the Middle Ages, wandering not with haste but with the soft rhythm of someone listening to the past rather than studying it. You may imagine yourself moving slowly along a dirt path that winds between fields of rye and barley. The dew glistens on every blade of grass, and the sound of distant livestock blends gently with the hush of morning. Off to your right, a small timber-framed house stands with a thin trail of smoke rising from its roof. That small line of smoke tells an important story, because in the Middle Ages, the household hearth was not just for cooking. It was warmth, survival, conversation, comfort, and companionship all in one. As we step inside that simple home, the scent of a burning log greets us like an old friend. A pot hangs over the fire, suspended by a sturdy iron hook. Inside the pot simmers a pottage, the humble, reliable dish that fed millions throughout centuries. It is a slow, steady food, and its gentle bubbling is somehow soothing, as if the soft sound itself warms the soul. A medieval cook stirs the pot with a wooden spoon worn smooth by the hands of many generations. She is quiet, focused, and unhurried. Her sleeves are rolled to the elbow, her posture relaxed by familiarity with the daily ritual. The ingredients inside the pot are modest: some barley, chopped leeks, a turnip, perhaps a bit of dried bean, and herbs gathered from the garden outside. If the family was lucky the day before, maybe there are a few scraps of meat lending their savory flavor to the mixture. But often, vegetables alone sustain the meal. Still, the aroma is warm, comforting, and ancient, the kind that makes even a stranger feel momentarily at home. Around the cook, the kitchen is dim but serene. A tiny window lets in a soft beam of morning light, illuminating dust motes that drift like tiny stars suspended in air. There is no rush. Medieval cooking was slow because life itself was slower. The fire crackles in gentle, steady patterns, each sound blending into the next. Above the hearth hang small bundles of rosemary, thyme, and sage, drying from the heat. Their earthy scents mix with the wood smoke, creating a perfume that feels both grounding and timeless. In this era, chimneys were not common in many homes. Smoke drifted freely through the room, rising up toward the roof vent in lazy spirals. Everything, clothing, hair, bread, utensils, absorbed that smoky fragrance. It became part of the taste of living, part of the taste of medieval cooking. As the morning passes, the cook tends to her bread. Not the soft, airy bread of modern times, but dense, hearty loaves made of coarse-ground rye, wheat, or oats. In the Middle Ages, flour was not sifted the way we know today. It contained pieces of grain, husk, and whatever else the millstones caught. Bread was nourishment, not indulgence. She shapes the dough with steady palms, pressing and folding with movements that seem almost meditative. When finished, she walks it to the communal bakehouse, because, unlike manor kitchens, most small homes did not have ovens. The village bakehouse is warm, glowing with heat from the massive stone oven. Villagers bring their loaves, each marked with a personal symbol carved into the dough: a line, a circle, a small flower. These marks ensure that when all the bread emerges golden and fragrant, each family retrieves its own. The oven master slides each loaf in using a long wooden peel. The heat radiates outward, wrapping the space in comforting warmth. The smell of baking medieval bread fills the air, thick and rustic, the kind of aroma that seems to hug the chest as it's breathed in. It is the scent of tradition, of daily ritual, of the shared life of a small community where simplicity is not a burden, but a rhythm of existence. Now we wander back to the home garden behind the cook's house. Medieval herb gardens were as essential as the hearth, full of practical magic. Each plant served a purpose, even several. Rosemary for remembrance and strength, thyme for courage, sage for good digestion and wisdom, lavender for peace, mint for cooling the body. They were not just ingredients. They were symbols, remedies, and companions to daily cooking. As you walk through the garden, bees hum in gentle spirals around the flowers, their sound soft and steady. The earth smells richly of life, and the sun has now grown warm enough to awaken the scent of the herbs beneath your footsteps. This garden is not only a place of food, but of quiet healing. Medieval cooking was intimately tied to nature, and every herb had a story reaching far beyond the kitchen table. From the modest village, our mind drifts, slowly, gracefully, to a larger kitchen, one belonging to a medieval manor house. The contrast is significant, yet the underlying rhythm remains familiar. Here, cooking is a bustling orchestra, but the movements are still measured and intentional. We see a massive stone hearth large enough for several cooks to stand inside it. Flames dance high, bright and golden, casting vivid shadows on the walls. A young boy turns a spit, rotating a haunch of venison. His motions are steady and patient, for roasting meat was a slow process requiring quiet attention. Copper pots hang above him, catching the fire's reflection in warm glints. The air is rich with aromas more luxurious than those in the village. Spices, herbs, wine, and honey. Wealthy households often used imported spices, which were treasures of the medieval world. Cinnamon from Sri Lanka, ginger from Asia, cloves from Indonesia, saffron gathered painstakingly from Mediterranean fields. These spices traveled breathtaking distances, carried by caravans crossing deserts and ships navigating blue, expansive seas. Each spice had a value equivalent to precious metals, yet in manor kitchens, they found their way into sauces, stews, and pastries to delight the noble palate. Imagine the soft scent of cloves simmering in a warm pot of wine, or the golden tint of saffron spreading slowly through a broth like sunlight stirring into water. Every spice carried with it a human story, a trader's footsteps, a sailor's journey, a merchant's bargain. And in this manor kitchen, the head cook adds a pinch of cinnamon to a dish, not hurriedly but with the calm authority of someone who has performed this quiet ritual for years. As the day progresses, the manor hall begins to fill with the gentle sounds of preparation for the evening meal. Long wooden tables stand ready, candles flickering softly along their length. Servants move through the hall in smooth, practiced motions. The atmosphere is peaceful. Even in a noble household, the evening meal was a shared experience that brought people together in warmth and community. Guests sit on sturdy benches, their conversations soft and contented. Wooden bowls and trenchers, thick slabs of stale bread used as plates, are set before them. Dishes arrive. Roasted meats glazed with honey, pottages filled with vegetables and grains, cheeses aged in cool cellars, apples baked with cinnamon and wine. Nothing is rushed. Meals in the Middle Ages unfolded slowly, accompanied by quiet conversation, laughter softened by the glow of candles, and the crackling of the great hearth at the far end of the hall. The hall's warmth spreads into every corner, and the mingling scents of herbs, bread, and wood smoke create an atmosphere deeply comforting to anyone present. When the feast is complete, we drift back toward the manor kitchen, now quieter, softer, the day's clamor replaced by a peaceful hum. Many pots have already been cleaned, their iron surfaces drying gently near the low fire. Only one pot remains bubbling faintly. Tomorrow's pottage already started. Medieval kitchens often kept a pot simmering endlessly, adding new ingredients each day, letting flavors build slowly like a story told over generations. The fire burns low, casting a warm amber glow across the stone floor. The head cook sits quietly on a small wooden stool, hands folded in her lap, watching the last sparks of the fire. Outside, night has fallen fully. The sounds of the village or manor grounds have quieted. The world feels wrapped in a soft blanket of darkness. An owl calls from somewhere beyond the fields. The wind brushes past the windows and gently shakes the herbs hanging from the rafters. This is the breath of medieval night, slow and calm. Inside the kitchen, everything rests. And as you linger in this moment, you feel connected to the past in a way that transcends words. Medieval cooking was not simply about recipes or ingredients. It was about rhythm, patience, community, and gratitude. It was about taking what the earth offered and transforming it, slowly, lovingly, into nourishment. It was about fire, the gentle bubbling of a pot, the earthy scent of herbs, the comfort of bread shared among friends or family. There is a softness in this ancient world, a deeply human warmth. No machinery, no rush, no noise beyond the simple music of daily life. Just hands working, fires burning, and time flowing gently like a stream. Now imagine the fire fading further. Imagine the last embers glowing like tiny suns beneath the ash. The kitchen breathes out one final warm sigh as the night wraps around it. The villagers sleep. The manor sleeps. The fields sleep under the silver light of the moon. And somewhere, the pottage in the pot continues its slow, steady bubbling, as if whispering stories from centuries long gone. Let that sound carry you gently toward rest, just as it lulled countless medieval families into dreams beside their humble hearths. Let your mind drift with the quiet of the past, soft, slow, and timeless. And as you breathe in the stillness, you may feel a sense of calm settling into your body. Calm born from the ancient comfort of fire, food, earth, and the simple beauty of life lived slowly. The night in the medieval world feels long and serene, its silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the soft tapping of a loose shutter against a timber wall. Somewhere in the village, a dog shifts in its sleep, offering a quiet sigh. The stars above are bright and sharp against the dark sky, unclouded by smoke or artificial light. It is in this quiet, lingering stillness that our journey continues. Not abruptly, and not with any jolt of narrative, but with the gentle ease of a dream continuing seamlessly into another. Imagine now that the morning has not yet arrived, but the very faintest hint of it lies just beyond the horizon. A dark blue glow, soft and shy, slowly spreads across the sky. The moon, pale and fading, rests above the rooftops. The kitchen we visited earlier still holds a faint warmth inside, the lingering heat of dying embers. It smells of last night's bread, of herbs, and of the pleasant woody scent of ash cooling. Even in this quiet, even while every soul sleeps, the medieval kitchen never feels truly empty. Kitchens of the Middle Ages had a kind of presence, a sense of continuity, as though they kept breathing gently even when no one was near the hearth. In that faint pre-dawn hour, a rooster calls somewhere in the distance. Another answers a little later, as though sleepily agreeing. Soon, a soft shuffle of footsteps begins outside the house. A villager is beginning the day. Perhaps the baker, rising before the rest of the village, preparing to heat the large communal oven. The soft thump of wood being stacked, the scrape of a shovel moving ashes aside. These sounds drift across the quiet countryside, barely disturbing the calm but adding their presence like soft strokes of a brush on canvas. Inside the small village home, the cook we met before stirs awake. She moves quietly so as not to disturb her family. Her first task is always the fire. She kneels beside the hearth, pushing aside the ash to reveal the glowing embers beneath. With a bit of dried straw and some thin twigs, she coaxes the fire back to life, blowing gently, her breath guiding the sparks into flame. The moment the fire catches, its gentle crackling adds warmth to the room. Not just physical warmth, but a sense of reassurance, a promise that another day can begin. The pot hanging above the fire still contains remnants of the pottage that simmered all night. It has thickened, deepened in flavor, becoming something richer and more comforting after long hours of quiet bubbling. She gives it a stir, tastes it, and nods softly to herself. Today she will add fresh vegetables, maybe some carrots or cabbage, depending on the season. She steps outside with a small woven basket, the morning air cool against her skin, and walks toward the garden. The garden looks different in this early light. Dew glistens on the leaves, and the herbs appear almost silver-edged. She moves among them with practiced care. Her fingers brush through the thyme, lifting its soft, peppery scent into the air. She pinches off a few sprigs of sage, its velvet-like leaves cool to the touch. She gathers onions, their papery skins crackling faintly, and a handful of leeks with long white stems and dark green tops. These humble vegetables, modest, simple, were the backbone of medieval cooking. They provided nourishment day after day, their flavors changing subtly with the earth and the weather. As she returns to her home, the village has begun to wake more fully. The sound of a bucket hitting the edge of the well echoes through the street. A woman calls softly to her child. A cow moos, waiting to be milked. Someone nearby is hammering a loose board back into place. Each sound is gentle, never urgent, blending with the morning in a way that feels natural and unforced. Life unfolds slowly here. Back in the kitchen, she chops her vegetables on a wooden board. The knife is simple but well cared for. Each slice is deliberate and steady. Her hands are sure, guided by years of experience rather than haste. She drops the vegetables into the pot, stirring them slowly, letting the fire do its work. The aromas begin to mingle again. Herbs warming, onions softening, steam rising in gentle waves. Even without spice, even without luxury, the dish becomes something comforting, something deeply human. As the hours pass, the village settles into its daily rhythm. Children chase chickens in the yard. Men lead oxen into the fields. Women spin wool, weave cloth, mend garments. And always somewhere food simmers. Food is the heartbeat of medieval life, not because meals were extravagant. They rarely were. But because preparing food was a constant thread woven through every part of the day. Now, imagine yourself drifting from this small kitchen to the outskirts of the village, where traveling merchants have arrived. They set up their stalls slowly, laying out items that bring a quiet stir of excitement. Brightly colored fabrics, bundles of dried figs, strings of garlic, rough clay jugs, and sometimes, if the season and trade have been favorable, small packets of spices. These spices are kept carefully wrapped. Pepper, a treasure. Saffron, as valuable as gold. Cumin, savory and warm. And perhaps a few cloves, whose aroma alone suggests distant worlds and warm seas. These are luxuries the villagers might rarely afford, but they smell them with wonder. Even a single pinch, bought for a special occasion, could transform an ordinary meal into something extraordinary. Let your mind drift further now, beyond the village walls, to a traveling kitchen, a camp kitchen belonging to traders or pilgrims journeying from one town to another. Their cooking is simple, but not without comfort. A fire crackles beneath iron tripods, supporting a pot in which grains are boiling. Someone adds dried peas, stirring slowly. Another cuts hard cheese into small pieces to soften in the hot mixture. Bread is passed around. Tough, travel-worn but filling. A skin of wine is shared. At night, the fire offers not only warmth and food but companionship, protection, and a small piece of familiarity in a world full of unknown paths. As evening falls again, let us shift our attention toward a different type of medieval kitchen, one belonging to a monastery. This setting is calmer still, even more peaceful, guided by ritual and silence. In the monastery kitchen, monks move with quiet purpose, their robes brushing the stone floors. The air carries the scent of herbs from their physic garden. Monks grew herbs not only for cooking but for healing, their knowledge of plants forming the foundation of early medicine. In a large pot, a vegetable broth simmers. A monk carefully adds each ingredient: carrots, parsnips, leeks, a handful of barley, a sprinkle of marjoram. The recipe is not written, but remembered, held in tradition, passed down through whispered instruction. Bread bakes in a stone oven, the simple brown loaves that sustain the monastery through long days of labor and long nights of prayer. The atmosphere is reverent, yet soothing. The sound of a ladle scraping the bottom of a pot, the faint hiss of dough settling in the oven, the flutter of sparrows outside the window, all become part of the quiet symphony of monastic life. Across the landscape, in a distant castle, preparations for a feast begin. The contrast between simple village meals and lordly feasting is vast, yet both belong to the same medieval tapestry. In the castle kitchen, torches illuminate a large stone room filled with movement. Cooks sharpen knives on whetstones. Assistants wash vegetables in cold water drawn from the well. Huge slabs of meat are seasoned with mixtures of spices: pepper, ginger, saffron, and sometimes sugar, a rare luxury. Sweet and savory flavors mingled freely in medieval cooking, surprising to modern tastes but delightful to medieval nobility. Imagine great cauldrons set over roaring fires, roasting spits turning with steady rhythm, cooks basting meats with thick sauces made of wine, fruit puree, and aromatic spices. The air is warm, fragrant, alive with the scent of roasting goose, of glazed pastries being prepared, of almonds ground into paste for thickening sauces. Yet even here, in the grandest kitchen, there is a feeling of rhythm and patience. Everyone knows their role. Every action has its place in the slow, ceremonial unfolding of the feast. Outside, musicians practice softly. Servants prepare long tables with embroidered linens. In the great hall, candles are being set, hundreds of them, to cast a soft golden glow over the upcoming celebration. The atmosphere, though busy, is gentle in its anticipation, like a calm breath before a joyous moment. Let your thoughts drift now from the castle back to the quiet countryside, where the moon rises once more. A shepherd sits beside a small fire, stirring a pot of simple broth made from what little he carries: wild garlic, bits of cheese, a handful of oats. The fire pops softly as he warms his hands. His sheep cluster nearby, bells chiming faintly as they rest. This too is part of medieval cooking. Solitude, simplicity, the quiet comfort of a warm bowl in the cold night. Across the landscape, each household ends its day in similar fashion. Fires burn low. Bread from earlier in the day sits on wooden boards, ready to be eaten with the next meal. Herbs hang from rafters, drying slowly, their fragrances filling the air with the promise of tomorrow's dishes. The night closes in gently, wrapping everything in silence and rest. As you breathe deeply, you may sense that across these medieval settings, village, monastery, castle, camp, there is a universal thread. Cooking is not merely a necessity. It is ritual. It is community. It is memory. It is the soothing repetition of motions passed from generation to generation. It is a fire lit at dawn and extinguished at night, a cycle as steady as breathing. You may imagine now that you are walking through the countryside at dusk, moving slowly, peacefully. The sky is painted in soft colors: rose, lavender, fading gold. You pass cottages with smoke rising gently from their chimneys. You hear laughter from one home, quiet singing from another. And everywhere you smell the comforting fragrances of medieval cooking: the sharpness of onions, the sweetness of baked apples, the earthiness of herbs, the warmth of fire-kissed bread. The deeper the night grows, the softer everything feels. Stars shimmer above the fields. The wind caresses the wheat. Somewhere, a pot still simmers quietly, adding its steady rhythm to the world. And you too, as you listen and imagine, feel yourself drifting into the warm embrace of this ancient calm. Let the medieval night settle around you like a soft blanket. Let the distant crackle of a hearth fire soothe your mind. Let the slow rhythm of a world without haste guide your breathing. And as your thoughts grow softer, allow yourself to drift deeper into rest, wrapped in the gentle, timeless quiet of kitchens that never fully slept, fires that always glowed, and meals that warmed both body and spirit through centuries of human life. The night drapes itself across the medieval landscape like a soft velvet cloth, its edges folding gently around fields, forests, stone walls, and quiet cottages. The moon, now high and pale, casts a silver glow upon the roads that wind between sleeping homes. Somewhere in the distance, a stream murmurs softly over smooth stones, its voice blending with a gentle chorus of crickets hidden in the grass. And in this hush, this deep and timeless quiet, our journey through medieval kitchens continues. Not abruptly, not with any great shift, but as if the story never paused, as if it simply took a slow breath and now exhales again. Imagine standing at the edge of the village. A faint breeze carries the scent of earth and distant wood smoke. You step forward slowly, as though the ground itself encourages gentleness. The cottages sit in peaceful clusters, their thatched roofs rounded and warm-looking even in the dim light. Each one contains a hearth, and though most fires have dwindled to glowing embers, they still pulse with a soft red heartbeat, keeping the homes warm through the long night. In one such home, the cook from earlier sleeps lightly on a straw mattress. The soft rise and fall of her breath blends with the distant crackle of the last glowing coals. But soon, very soon, she will rise again. For in the Middle Ages, the rhythm of life rarely paused. Fires needed tending. Dough needed kneading. Animals needed feeding. Meals needed preparing long before the sun appeared. Before dawn even stirs, she opens her eyes. Not abruptly, but with the slow, natural awakening of someone accustomed to early mornings. She stretches her hands toward the warmth of the hearth, feeling the mild heat on her fingertips before placing a small log onto the embers. The spark grows. The flame blooms softly, illuminating the room with a tender light that feels like a whisper rather than a greeting. Outside, the sky is just beginning to pale. A faint streak of gray-blue appears where the horizon meets the fields. Birds have not yet begun their morning song, but you can sense their nearness, the quiet fluttering in the trees. The cook ties her apron, steps outside into the cool pre-dawn air, and walks toward the well. The handle creaks as she lowers the bucket, its echo drifting across the village. The water below reflects the faintest shimmer of early light. When she pulls the bucket up, the droplets falling from its rim sound like tiny bells, delicate and calming. She carries it indoors, each step familiar, steady. Inside, she pours some of the water into a basin and begins washing a handful of barley, rubbing the grains lightly between her palms. The sound is soft like sand slipping through fingers. She places the barley into the pot left simmering overnight, then adds a few sprigs of sage from the small bundle hanging near the hearth. The aroma rises immediately, earthy, warm, comforting, and the house begins to smell once again like a place where life stirs slowly and fully. As the day begins to break, other villagers start their routines. A shepherd walks past with his crook, heading toward the fields where sheep lie curled in the last shadows of night. The blacksmith stretches outside his workshop, yawning loudly as he prepares to relight his forge. A child carrying a small loaf under her arm walks toward the bakehouse, where the baker has already lit the oven. The fire inside the massive structure glows orange, ready to turn dough into bread for the entire community. The baker dusts flour from his hands as he opens the heavy wooden door of the oven, feeling the heat against his cheeks. He hums a quiet tune while shaping dough into rounds, each stamped with the mark of the family it belongs to. Meanwhile, far from the village, a small traveling caravan has stopped near the edge of the forest. The travelers are merchants bringing goods across long distances: salt, wool, dried fruits, sometimes rare spices wrapped tightly in cloth. They rise before dawn as well, lighting a small campfire and placing a pot above the flames. One of them pours water into the pot, then adds handfuls of millet and dried berries. The mixture begins to bubble, releasing a warm, slightly sweet fragrance into the cool morning air. Their movements are unhurried. There is no rush. The road ahead is long, but each day begins the same way, with a fire, a pot, and the hope for a safe journey. As the sun slowly lifts above the horizon, its rays fall upon a monastery perched on a low hill. The monks are already awake. Their chants echo softly through the stone corridors, steady and soothing. The monastery kitchen awakens to a different rhythm, quiet, reverent. A young monk opens the shutters, letting golden light spill across the stone counters. Dust motes dance in this new dawn, swirling softly like tiny spirits awakened by the sun. He kneels beside the hearth and lights the fire, watching patiently as the flames grow. His face remains calm, serene. The monastic garden outside is filled with rows of herbs and medicinal plants: angelica, mint, hyssop, chamomile, horehound, basil. Dew clings to their leaves like tiny crystals. A monk moves slowly between them, gathering what is needed for the day's meals: handfuls of mint for the midday broth, sprigs of marjoram to steep in water for evening digestion, and several leeks to add depth to the day's pottage. His movements are careful, almost ceremonial. Each herb is picked with mindfulness, its purpose understood deeply. In the kitchen, another monk grinds almonds using a stone mortar. The soft rhythmic grinding sounds like a gentle heartbeat. Almonds were often used to make a kind of milk, especially during seasons of fasting when dairy was forbidden. The paste he creates will be mixed with warm water, strained through fine cloth, and added to stews or poured over vegetables, creating a richness that feels indulgent despite its simplicity. Far away, in the kitchens of a castle, the morning begins with more bustle but the same underlying rhythm of purpose. Servants start their tasks at dawn. Some pluck feathers from pheasants and geese, dropping them into baskets with a quiet rustle. Others prepare vegetables brought in from the castle gardens. The head cook, still calm despite the work ahead, oversees the preparation with a soft firmness. The scent of baking bread wafts from the ovens, mingling with the warmth of the fires. Even in a place of wealth, the morning holds a gentleness, a slow unfurling of activity as light fills the stone halls. Imagine now that we travel even farther, to a small fishing village along a medieval coast. The salty wind carries the cry of gulls. Fishermen return with their early catch, silver-scaled fish glinting in the morning light. The nets drip with seawater, and the smell of brine fills the air. Wives of the fishermen clean the fish by the shore, rinsing them in wooden tubs. Some fish will be salted and stored for winter. Others will be cooked immediately in clay pots set upon flat stones heated by driftwood fires. The sea, always present, lends its voice to every dish they prepare. As noon approaches across the medieval world, kitchens in every setting, village, monastery, castle, caravan, reach their warmest, brightest state. Fires burn strongly, pots bubble, bread cools on wooden boards, cheese is sliced. Apples and pears are washed in basins of cool water. Even the animals sense the activity. Dogs sit nearby hoping for scraps, cats curl quietly near the hearth, mindful of mice. And as afternoon drifts in, the warmth of the day begins to fade. Shadows grow longer. The slow hum of daily labor softens. In the village, the cook tastes the now richly flavored pottage that has been simmering since dawn. She adds a pinch of salt, maybe a handful of chopped herbs. She ladles some into a wooden bowl for her children. They sit on stools made by hand, their feet swinging gently as they eat. Their laughter is soft, innocent, unaware that centuries in the future, someone might imagine them from afar. In the monastery, the monks eat quietly, breaking bread and dipping it into warm broth. Their silence is not heavy but peaceful, filled with gratitude. After the meal, one monk tends to the gardens while another writes in a manuscript, preserving knowledge that will last far beyond their lifetimes. In the castle, the afternoon is a time of planning for the evening feast. Servants carry trays of ingredients. Musicians rehearse. The great hall is swept. Torches are prepared. The atmosphere is festive yet gentle, like a calm tide preparing to rise. As the sun begins its slow descent, a golden glow settles over fields and rooftops. Birds quiet themselves. Travelers look for places to stop for the night. Families gather closer to their fires. Bread from the morning is eaten with cheese, fruit, or broth. Conversations drift softly through open windows. And now, as darkness folds once again across the land, the medieval world settles into its familiar nighttime rhythm. Fires shrink to warm embers. Tools are cleaned and hung. The smell of the day, bread, herbs, warm vegetables, wood smoke, lingers in every room. Candles burn low. The wind whispers through cracks in the walls. And slowly, so slowly, sleep settles over villages, monasteries, castles, shores, and every road between them. You sense, perhaps, that nothing truly stops here. Even in sleep, the medieval kitchen holds a kind of presence, a quiet continuity. Pot may still simmer. A log may still crack. A cat may stretch near the hearth. Life slows, but it never breaks. It breathes in long, calm rhythms, just the way you are meant to breathe now. Let your mind drift with those ancient fires, with those gentle hands preparing humble meals, with the quiet rituals that shaped each day. Feel the softness of the night wrap around you like a warm cloak. Feel the distant pulse of a world where time moved slower, where food was made with patience, where fires burned steadily, and where each moment of rest was earned and cherished. Let yourself drift deeper now. The kitchens of the Middle Ages continue their soft murmuring in the background of your mind, crackling embers, boiling pots, laughter softened by candlelight, footsteps on wooden floors, distant bells from a monastery tower. All blending together into a single peaceful lullaby. And as you settle into that lullaby, allow yourself to slip gently towards sleep, slow, warm, and timeless. Just as the medieval world once did, night after night, beneath the same moon that watches over you now. The night has deepened over the medieval countryside, and everything lies wrapped in a soft, velvety hush. The stars shimmer like tiny lanterns hung above fields of barley and wheat, their faint light touching rooftops and riverbanks with a silvery glow. A cool breeze moves lazily through the trees, brushing the leaves with a sound so gentle it almost resembles a whisper. It is in this serene moment, when the world is suspended between the quiet of night and the promise of dawn, that our journey continues. Not with any break or change of rhythm, but as though the long, ancient story of medieval kitchens was merely waiting for you to return. Imagine walking slowly along a narrow path lined with stones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Your pace is unhurried. The ground beneath your feet feels familiar, as if you've walked this road before in another time, another life. Ahead, soft glimmers of candlelight flicker from the windows of cottages. These warm lights guide you like gentle beacons through the darkness. Inside one of these cottages, the cook we have followed across the hours sleeps lightly. Her breathing is calm, steady, perfectly in tune with the heartbeat of the world outside. The fire in her hearth has burned down to glowing embers, their warmth still radiating into the room. The pot over the fire gives one last quiet bubble, releasing a faint aroma of sage and barley. Even in rest, the medieval kitchen seems alive, soft, watchful, comforting. A rooster crows faintly in the distance, earlier than usual, its call carried by the night wind. The cook's eyes flutter open. Not abruptly, but slowly, like a candle flame growing brighter. She sits up, wraps a woolen shawl around her shoulders, and rises from her simple bed. Her bare feet touch the cool floor, grounding her in the beginning of another day. She kneels by the hearth and gently stirs the remaining embers. Her touch is light yet practiced, and soon the embers flare to life, glowing more brightly as she adds a few small pieces of wood. The new flames reach upward with slow, elegant movements, illuminating the stone walls and wooden shelves filled with bowls, herbs, and tools. She steps outside for water, the night air cool against her skin. Above her, the sky is shifting from deep navy to a softer blue, signaling the first hint of dawn. The village is almost completely silent. Only the rustle of chickens in their coops and the distant shuffle of a sheepdog keeping watch break the quiet. As she lowers the bucket into the well, the rope creaks faintly. The water splashes softly, and when she pulls the bucket up, droplets fall like tiny stars returning to the earth. Back inside, she pours the water into the pot and begins preparing the day's first meal. She takes from her storage a handful of dried peas and a small bundle of herbs she gathered earlier in the week. The herbs, sage, thyme, and a bit of marjoram, release their scent immediately as they meet the warm steam rising from the pot. She moves with slow assurance, her motions rhythmic and serene. As dawn slowly breaks, the rest of the village comes to life. A man leading his cow to pasture hums an old tune under his breath. A woman hanging laundry outside greets the day with a long stretch. Children peek out from doorways, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Everything happens softly, as though the village itself wishes not to disturb the early morning peace. The baker lights his oven once again. The crackle of the fire echoes against the stone walls of the bakehouse. He mixes flour, water, and salt with steady, purposeful movements. The dough takes shape beneath his palms, and soon the warm scent of bread fills the air. Loaves marked with symbols, small circles, simple slashes, or floral patterns, are placed carefully into the oven. The heat envelopes them, promising a crusty, hearty bread that will feed families through the day. Not far away, in the forest at the edge of the village, a small campfire flickers as travelers prepare their breakfast. They are merchants on a long journey, and their supplies are simple. A pot of water boils over the fire, into which they toss oats, dried berries, and a little honey saved for the cold mornings. The scent of warm honey blends with the fresh aroma of the forest, creating a comforting fragrance that softens their weary expressions. They speak in low tones, sharing memories of roads traveled, markets visited, and the hope of good trade in the next town. As the sun climbs higher, a soft golden light floods the monastery on the hill. The monks begin their day with prayer, their chant rising like a peaceful river of sound. In the monastery kitchen, a monk grinds herbs using a stone mortar. The rhythmic sound of grinding, soft, slow, steady, echoes gently throughout the room. Another monk brings vegetables from the garden. Carrots bright as embers, leeks long and crisp, cabbages with dew still clinging to their leaves. Each vegetable is washed in a wooden basin filled with cool water from the monastery's well. The droplets sparkle in the sunlight like tiny jewels. The monks prepare a simple pottage, but with great care. They add barley that was harvested in autumn, dried herbs from their physic garden, and a small amount of almond milk prepared earlier in the morning. The mixture simmers peacefully, filling the kitchen with a warm, soothing aroma. Bread bakes in a nearby oven, its crust cracking gently as steam escapes. In a castle beyond the hills, the atmosphere is more bustling but still marked by a kind of medieval calm. Servants carry trays of fresh vegetables. A group of young boys carefully polish large copper pots until they shine in the morning light. The head cook inspects the meat to be roasted later, a haunch of venison, a pair of ducks, and some rabbits caught in the forest. She considers the spices carefully. Pepper precious and costly, ginger warming and sharp, cloves sweet and aromatic, saffron golden and rare. She moves slowly, thoughtfully, adding just enough spice to create flavor without excess. A pot nearby contains apples being stewed with honey and wine, a fragrant mixture that fills the kitchen with a sweet, comforting scent. Her movements are not rushed. Even in the busiest medieval kitchens, cooking was an art conducted with mindfulness. Farther along the coast, a fishing village is already starting the midday work of preserving fish for winter. Fishermen clean their catch in silence, their knives moving with practiced ease. Women salt the fish and lay them on wooden racks to dry under the sun. The sea breeze carries the scent of salt and seaweed, mixing with the faint aroma of fish frying in pans set over small fires. A child sits nearby, nibbling on a piece of bread while watching the waves roll gently onto the shore. As midday settles over the land, each place, village, monastery, castle, coast, feels alive in its own gentle rhythm. The meals prepared reflect the life of the people who make them. Simple, nourishing, steady. Each pot tells a story. Each loaf of bread carries the imprint of hands that worked the dough. Each herb carries knowledge passed from one generation to the next. When afternoon arrives, the light begins to soften. Shadows stretch across the ground, long and gentle. Birds rest in the branches. The smell of cooking fills the village once again. The cook ladles steaming pottage into wooden bowls for her family. Children sit beside her, swinging their legs, telling stories, laughing softly. The warmth of the food spreads through them like a gentle hug. In the monastery, the monks enjoy their quiet meal, dipping bread into warm broth, their silence filled with unspoken gratitude. After the meal, they return to their tasks, writing manuscripts, tending herbs, repairing tools. Everything moves at a pace that encourages reflection, peace, and gratitude. In the castle, preparations for the evening feast continue. Servants slice fruits, prepare pastries, and set tables with heavy wooden plates. Musicians tune their instruments, practicing soft melodies that will accompany the meal. Torches are prepared for lighting once dusk settles. The hall glows with anticipation. As the sun sets, painting the sky with hues of rose and amber, the countryside begins to settle once again into the soft embrace of evening. The cook's home fills with the familiar scent of wood smoke. Bread left from the morning is eaten with cheese and onions. A candle burns on the table, flickering gently as the wind whispers outside. The monastery bells ring, their sound drifting across fields like a lullaby. The monks gather once more for evening prayer, their chanting blending with the sound of crickets beginning their nightly chorus. The castle hall fills with soft laughter and warm food. Candles shimmer on stone walls. The air is rich with the scent of roasted meats, spiced wine, honeyed pastries. Yet even here, amid wealth and celebration, there is a deep sense of calm. When night falls completely, darkness spreads across the land like a peaceful blanket. The fires burn low. The kitchens grow quiet. Pots are cleaned, tools put away, and herbs left hanging in bundles to dry. Families settle into their beds. The wind rustles the thatched roofs with a sound so faint it feels like the night itself breathing. Somewhere in the village, a single pot still simmers on a low flame. The soft bubbling becomes part of the nighttime silence, a gentle reminder that life never fully stops, that warmth remains even in darkness. And as you imagine all of this, your own mind begins to soften. Your breathing slows. The rhythm of ancient kitchens, steady and timeless, wraps around you like a warm cloak. Firelight flickering across stone walls. Bread cooling on wooden boards. Herbs swaying gently from rafters. Quiet conversations softened by candlelight. The distant call of an owl. The sigh of evening wind. Let these images drift through you. Let them carry you deeper into rest. The medieval world breathes slowly, peacefully, inviting you to breathe the same way. Let the warmth of ancient fires, the calm of patient cooking, and the softness of night guide you toward sleep. The world grows quieter, softer, more distant, and in that deep quiet, you find yourself drifting, slowly, gently, safely, as if curling beside a hearth that has burned for centuries, glowing softly into the dark. The night stretches softly across the medieval world, deeper now than before, settling into every valley and hillside like a gentle blanket. The stars overhead shimmer with a calm steadiness, as if they have watched countless generations cook their meals over countless fires. The air is cool but not harsh, carrying with it the faint scent of wood smoke, earth, and faraway fields resting under the moonlight. And so, without any break, without any shift in tone, our journey continues, flowing on as though we never stopped walking through these old villages and ancient kitchens. The village lies quiet, its homes dark except for a few windows where a faint orange glow still flickers. Somewhere, a dog gives a soft bark before settling down again, paws tucked beneath its chest. An owl glides silently from one rooftop to another, its feathers stirring barely a whisper. The river nearby reflects the moon in gentle ripples, each one gliding outward like the breath of a sleeping world. Inside one cottage, the familiar cook lies awake, not out of worry but because she has lived her life by the rhythm of the hearth. Long before the sun rises, long before the roosters call in earnest, she stirs from her place on the straw mattress. Her breath forms almost invisible clouds in the cool morning air. She wraps a woolen shawl around her shoulders and moves quietly, careful not to wake the others. The embers in the fireplace glow faintly, like sleepy eyes blinking in the dimness. She kneels and gently nudges the ash aside, revealing those soft red embers beneath. With practiced grace, she adds a few dry twigs and leans close, blowing softly. The embers brighten, catching the twigs, and soon a small flame grows, licking upward with calm, steady light. She adds a slightly bigger piece of wood, watching as the fire breathes its way back into life. The crackle is soft at first, then warmer, filling the room with a sound that feels ancient and comforting. She brings water from the covered bucket in the corner and pours it into the pot above the flame. The water meets the warmth with a faint hiss, a tiny voice greeting the start of the day. She selects dried peas from a clay jar, pours them into her cupped hand, and lets them fall into the water. The sound is gentle, earthy. She takes a pinch of herbs from a bundle hanging near the hearth, perhaps thyme today or maybe sage, and crumbles the leaves between her fingers, releasing their rich aroma into the air. Outside, the first faint line of dawn slowly spreads along the horizon. A rooster crows again, this time with more certainty. A sheep bleats softly in the distance. The world, once covered in the deep quiet of night, begins to stretch and yawn into wakefulness. The doors of nearby cottages open one by one. A woman steps outside to gather firewood. A farmer leads his oxen toward the fields. A child in a long woolen tunic runs to fetch water from the well. Their footsteps are soft on the earth, blending with the early morning birdsong now beginning to fill the air. The village baker, as always, is among the first fully awake. The bakehouse glows with its own internal sun, the large stone oven already radiating warmth. He kneads dough in slow, practiced movements. Flour dusts his hands like pale snow. The dough rises and falls with each push, each fold, and soon he forms it into round loaves. Each family's mark is pressed into the dough, a line for one, a cross for another, a simple curved shape for yet another. The marks are small signatures in a world where handwriting is rare, and symbols carry more than meaning. They carry identity. As the loaves bake, the scent fills the entire village, winding through the streets like a comforting thread. The aroma of bread is something universal, something that touches even the most weary of hearts. It is the smell of nourishment, of home, of continuity in a world where many things are uncertain. Now imagine walking farther from the village, toward the forest. Travelers, perhaps traders returning from a distant market, have made their camp beneath tall trees whose branches weave like ancient hands above their heads. Their fire glows warmly, illuminating their simple pots and wooden bowls. One of them stirs a porridge made with oats and dried apples, the mixture bubbling gently. Another adds a bit of honey saved for moments like this. Despite the long journey behind them and the longer one ahead, their faces soften as they share the warm, simple meal. Fire, food, and companionship turn even the darkest forest into a place of rest. Across the fields, the monastery stands in serene stillness. The monks have risen well before daylight, their chants echoing through the stone corridors. Their voices blend in harmony, rising and falling like waves along a quiet shore. In the monastery kitchen, a monk lights the fire with deliberate, prayerful motions. Another grinds herbs for breakfast. Angelica, hyssop, marjoram, each herb chosen not only for flavor but for its gentle medicinal properties. The scent of crushed herbs drifts through the air, mixing with the warm scent of bread baking in the monastery oven. Nearby, another monk pours water into a pot and adds barley, carrots, and leeks from the monastery's well-tended garden. Each vegetable has been grown with care, watered by hand, harvested quietly at dawn. As the mixture simmers, the broth thickens, releasing a warm, earthy aroma that fills the kitchen. The monks prepare almond milk for later in the day, grinding almonds slowly, rhythmically, their movements almost meditative. Everything here is unhurried. Everything follows the same gentle rhythm. In a grand castle not far away, morning begins with a different kind of energy. Still peaceful, still slow, but more bustling than the monastery or the village. Servants prepare spices carefully stored in wooden boxes. Pepper, ginger, cinnamon, and saffron. Each spice is precious. Each grain a small miracle of travel from lands beyond imagining. Meat is seasoned with a blend of spices and herbs. Some kitchen workers prepare pies filled with fruits or vegetables, their hands shaping the pastry with care. Others tend to large pots of stew that will simmer for hours, deepening in flavor. But despite the activity, despite the movement, there is no sense of rush. Medieval kitchens, even the busiest, work according to a natural pace defined not by clocks but by fire, ingredients, and the patience required to transform raw food into comfort. The day progresses softly into noon. In the village, the cook serves warm bowls of pottage to her family. The children gather around the table, their eyes wide with anticipation. The steam rising from their bowls smells of sage and barley, vegetables softened to tenderness. Bread is placed beside them, thick slices torn with hands rather than cut. They dip the bread into the warm stew, laughing quietly as they taste the familiar flavors. In the monastery, the monks gather for their midday meal, their silence gentle, not heavy. They break bread together, their heads bowed in gratitude. The sound of their chewing, the scraping of spoons against wooden bowls, the faint crackle of the fire, these simple sounds create a peaceful harmony. In the castle, the nobles enjoy their own midday spread. roasted meats, fresh fruits, spiced wine, and sweet pastries prepared with great skill. Musicians play quietly in the background. The hall is warm, lit by sunlight streaming through tall windows. Even here, where wealth allows for variety and indulgence, there is a sense of softness to the meal. Nobles speak quietly. Servants move with gentle precision. The feast feels more like a communal exhale than a celebration. As afternoon arrives, the world grows quieter again. The sun softens its glow, casting long shadows over fields and cobblestone paths. A shepherd returns with his flock, their bells chiming softly. Children play outside, running with sticks, pretending to be knights or travelers. Women spin wool or mend clothing in the fading light. The cook prepares an evening meal, though it is simple. Bread, cheese, maybe a bit of broth poured over vegetables. The simplicity itself is soothing. The monastery bells ring again, echoing across fields. The monks return to prayer, their voices rising like soft incense into the late afternoon sky. The kitchen grows quiet as the last pots are cleaned and the fire is stoked for the evening. The castle prepares for another feast. Servants light torches along the halls. Musicians test their strings. The scent of roasted duck and spiced apples drifts through the corridors. But even here, night draws a calm veil over the stone walls. As dusk settles, a golden-orange glow spreads across the horizon, fading slowly into purple and deep blue. The air cools. Birds sing their last notes of the day before settling into their nests. Families close their doors. Candles are lit one by one, their flames flickering gently in windows across the village. Night returns fully. The world grows soft again. Fires burn low. Crickets fill the darkness with their endless song. And inside each kitchen, warmth lingers, both from the hearth and from the memory of meals prepared with patience and love. The cook sits by the fading fire, hands folded on her lap. The monk walks slowly through the quiet corridors of the monastery, listening to the night wind. The castle hall empties gradually, the feast dimming into embers. Travelers rest beneath trees. Fishermen fall asleep to the sound of waves. The medieval world exhales. And you, drifting through these images, feel your breath match its rhythm. Low, warm, steady. The kitchens of the past glow softly in your mind. Embers, bread, herbs, soup, laughter, firelight, quiet footsteps, whispered prayer. The echoes of a world long gone, yet deeply familiar. Let these images soften your thoughts. Let them carry you toward rest. Let the warmth of ancient hearths soothe your heart. Let the stillness of medieval night guide your breath. And as the world grows quieter and quieter, you drift deeper and deeper, into a calm as old as fire, as gentle as candlelight, and as comforting as a warm pot simmering endlessly through the night. The night once again wraps itself around the medieval world like a soft cloak, familiar and comforting, as if it has done this very thing for centuries without ever changing its gentle touch. The stars glimmer high above, quiet and distant, yet somehow watching over every cottage, every field, every hearth where a fire still breathes faintly beneath the ashes. A pale moon hangs low, its light spilled softly across the rooftops and winding roads, catching the edges of thatched roofs and wooden fences with a silver glow. Somewhere, a small stream continues its endless murmuring over stones, a peaceful sound that might lull even the most restless soul toward sleep. Inside the little village we have visited so many times in our wandering, the air is still. But the stillness is not empty. It is full of warmth and memory. Fires that glowed bright earlier in the evening have now settled into embers, faint but steadfast. The cook, who has moved through each day with quiet purpose, lies sleeping not far from the hearth. The faint orange light casts soft shadows across her face, highlighting the lines that speak of many days spent kneading dough, stirring pots, gathering herbs, and tending to the delicate balance between hunger and nourishment. The wooden shelves along the wall hold what remains after the day's labors. A heel of bread, a wedge of cheese wrapped in cloth, a few onions, a clay jar of dried lentils, and bunches of herbs hanging upside down, their silhouettes swaying almost imperceptibly in the light breath of the night air. Outside her cottage and throughout the village, The world feels suspended. Chickens sleep on their perches. The old dog curled by the door has shifted only slightly, one ear lifted toward distant sounds. A cartwheel creaks softly as it cools in the night air. It is that deep hour when even thoughts feel slower, softer, as if the whole world is breathing in long, even waves. And into this calm, the faintest hint of change is already folded, because soon the cycle will begin again. Eventually, almost without you noticing exactly when, the east begins to pale just a little. A soft gray washes into the edge of the sky, hardly a color yet, more like a promise. The first bird, somewhere in the hedgerow, attempts a tentative note, as though checking whether the morning is truly near. The cook's eyes open slowly, not startled, but guided by a rhythm so familiar it is part of her bones. She listens for a moment to the quiet room and to the soft ticking of the cooling wood in the hearth. Then she rises, wraps her shawl around herself, and moves toward the fire without needing to see clearly. Her feet know the path by habit alone. She kneels, pushes aside a layer of ash with a small iron poker, and reveals the embers still glowing beneath. Their soft light pulses, like tiny hearts waiting to be awakened. She adds a few dry twigs and leans close, her breath a gentle breeze coaxing the embers to catch. Slowly, patiently, the sparks brighten, stretching upward until they curl into small flames. Those flames reach for the larger pieces of wood she adds next, and soon the fire is burning with a quiet, steady strength, the way it has done every morning of her life. Today, the air feels a little different, crisper, cooler, with a faint edge that speaks of the turning of the year. The harvest is past or nearly so. Fields that once shimmered golden with grain now lie short and stubbled. Trees along the edges of the village have begun to drop their leaves, which gather in small piles along fences and paths. There is the smell of damp earth mingled with wood smoke, the unmistakable scent of a season preparing to shift into colder days. The cook knows what this means for the kitchen. Soon the garden will offer fewer fresh herbs, fewer tender leaves. But the shelves will grow heavier with preserved foods. There are onions braided into long ropes hanging from the rafters, bulbs clinking softly when they move. Garlic, too, bound in clusters like pale lanterns. Barrels of salted fish and cured meat stand along one wall. Clay jars hold dried beans, peas, and lentils. In one corner, apples rest in straw, their skins still taut and fragrant. Cabbages, sturdy and dependable, are stored in a cool space, waiting to fill pots in the weeks ahead. She fills a pot with water from a small bucket and sets it above the renewed flame. She adds barley, faithful barley that never fails to nourish, and a handful of dried peas. Then she reaches up to cut down a few leaves of sage and thyme from the bundles overhead. Their fragrance is deeper now that they are dry, more concentrated, like memories condensed into something you can taste. She crumbles the leaves between her fingers, letting them fall into the pot. The smell that rises is both earthy and soothing, like the breath of the land itself. Outside, the village begins to stir once more. A boy runs past carrying an armful of firewood, leaving small footprints in the cool soil. A man checks the sky, guessing at the day's weather by the color of the morning. A woman steps into her small yard to hang freshly washed linen on a line, the cloth clapping softly in the breeze. In the distance, the rhythmic thud of a millstone turning signals that the miller has already begun his work, grinding grain for flour. Life moves quietly but steadily, each person playing a part in the unseen harmony of daily survival. Today is also a market day in a nearby town, and some villagers will walk along the dirt road to sell what they can and buy what they cannot make themselves. The cook watches them prepare. A man loading a basket with eggs nestled in straw, another wrapping a wheel of cheese in cloth, a woman carrying bunches of dried herbs tied neatly together. They will return later, their baskets lighter or heavier depending on the fortunes of trade, perhaps bringing back a small treat. Figs, nuts, a bit of honey, or if luck and coin allow, the tiniest measure of imported spice. As the sun rises, casting a pale gold over the fields, we follow the road in our imagination to that nearby market. The town square is lined with stalls and carts, each one a small world of its own. There is a stall with brightly dyed fabrics, one with tools and iron nails made by a blacksmith, another with clay pots of all shapes and sizes. And among them are the food sellers, women with baskets of onions, leeks, and carrots, men with barrels of salted fish and smoked eels, a beekeeper selling honey in earthen pots, golden and thick. The air is full of smells: fresh bread from a baker's stall, where large loaves rest on wooden boards still warm from the oven, sharp cheese, crumbly and strong, nuts roasted lightly in pans, apples and pears, and somewhere, faint but enchanting, the exotic fragrance of spices. A merchant under a small awning opens a wooden chest divided into tiny compartments, each holding its own treasure: black peppercorns that roll like tiny dark beads, sticks of cinnamon with their curled bark, nutmegs small and solid, ready to be grated, cloves shaped like little flowers, saffron threads, red and delicate, like threads of captured sunset. These spices are beyond the daily reach of most villagers, but they look and they breathe in their scent, and sometimes on a rare day, they buy just enough to flavor a feast or to mark a special moment: a wedding, a birth, or a holy day. In that world of modest abundance and careful scarcity, a pinch of cinnamon or a sliver of ginger is more than a taste. It is a memory of faraway lands and a whisper that the world is wider than fields and forests. As noon approaches, we drift back toward our familiar places. The monastery, set a little apart from the busy town, continues its calm, measured existence. In the monastery's kitchen, a monk stirs a pot of vegetable stew made with leeks, carrots, and cabbage, enriched with barley and a bit of oil pressed from olives or nuts. Nearby, other monks are busy with preservation. One carefully layers vegetables with salt to make them last through winter. Another dries herbs on racks, turning them gently so the air reaches every leaf. A third monk stirs a pot of must, the gently boiled juice of grapes, which will be transformed into a thick, sweet syrup to flavor dishes through the cold months when fresh fruit is scarce. In a corner of the kitchen, a monk gently heats honey with spices, maybe a stick of cinnamon, some ginger, a few cloves, and then pours the fragrant mixture over nuts. Once cooled, these will harden into a sweet, chewy treat, shared in moderation but savored as something precious. The warm sweetness of that mixture fills the air, mingling with the steam from the stew and the ever-present scent of wood smoke. Everything in this kitchen is done with care and patience. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is rushed. In the castle, too, preparations for winter are underway. In vaulted storerooms, servants stack sacks of grain and barrels of ale. Cured hams and sides of bacon hang from hooks in the cool darkness, their smoked scent rich and comforting. Fish salted and dried from earlier in the year rest in wooden tubs. Fruits are preserved in honey or thick syrups, kept in tightly sealed jars. The castle kitchen hums like a busy hive. Cooks pickle vegetables in large jugs, layering them with spices. They boil down fruits to make pastes that can be sliced and served like sweets when the snow lies deep outside and fresh apples are only a memory. In one corner of this grand kitchen, a cook is preparing small pastries filled with a mixture of dried fruits, nuts, and a little wine, scented with cloves and cinnamon. She shapes each pastry carefully, folding the dough so that the filling stays inside, then arranges them on a tray. When they bake, their crusts will turn golden and flaky, the fillings becoming soft and fragrant. These small sweets will be served during feasts, their flavors a reminder that even in cold and darkness, warmth and sweetness can be found. By late afternoon, the world begins to glow with the gentle light that precedes evening. The sky turns from bright blue to a softer, deeper shade, brushed with streaks of pink and gold. In the village, the cook tastes her pottage once again. It has simmered for hours now, the barley and peas softened, the herbs blending into a harmonious flavor. She adds a little more salt if she has it, maybe a scrap of cured meat if the family can spare it. She ladles the steaming stew into bowls. Bread, perhaps baked yesterday, is cut or broken into pieces. The family gathers around the rough wooden table, their faces illuminated by the fading light from the small window and the warm glow of the hearth. There is something deeply comforting about this scene. It is not grand, not rich by the measures of the world, but it is full of warmth, full of care, full of a quiet gratitude that comes from knowing that the fire still burns, that the fields still give, that the pot still holds enough to share. The monastery's evening meal is likewise simple and calm. The monks eat in silence, tasting the fruits of their labor. Vegetable stew, bread, perhaps a piece of cheese or a bit of preserved fruit. The quiet is not empty. It is filled with reflection, with thankfulness, with a soft rustle of robes and the gentle clink of wooden spoons against bowls. In the castle hall, evening brings another kind of gathering. Candles are lit in iron sconces, their flames flickering and casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. A long table is set with dishes prepared throughout the day. There are roasted meats, seasoned vegetables, thick slices of bread, bowls of stewed fruit, and perhaps a plate of those fragrant pastries filled with nuts and spices. The nobles talk and laugh in low voices. Minstrels play gentle melodies on lutes and harps. The warmth of the fire in the great hearth spreads into every corner of the room, hemmed in by tapestries that soften the stone. As night descends fully, the land slowly quiets once more. In the fishing village along the coast, the waves whisper against the shore under a darkening sky. Nets are coiled, boats are pulled higher up the beach, and small fires die down as fishermen and their families take their rest. In the caravan camp at the forest's edge, travelers finish their simple supper, a bit of bread, a spoonful of beans, some dried fruit, and pull their cloaks tighter against the cool air. The embers of their fire glow like small suns on the earth. In every kitchen, in every place we have wandered, the story is the same at its core. A fire, a pot, hands at work, the transformation of humble ingredients into something warm and sustaining. It is a story of survival, yes, but also a story of care, of patience, of quiet love woven into everyday tasks. And now, as you listen to this story, you may feel that same warmth curling gently around you. Your breathing slows, matching the soft rhythm of medieval life. The images of bread cooling on wooden boards, of herbs hanging from beams, of pots simmering slowly over open flames, begin to blur pleasantly at the edges, like a painting viewed through half-closed eyes. The clink of wooden spoons, the low murmur of distant voices, the crackle of the hearth, all become part of a quiet lullaby sung not in words, but in sounds and scents and soft light. The night deepens. The fires burn low. The medieval world, village, monastery, castle, coast, forest, rests under the watchful gaze of stars that have seen it all before. And you, drifting along these ancient paths in your mind, are gently invited to rest with it. Let the old kitchens fade slowly into darkness, leaving only the memory of their warmth. Let the last glow of the embers become a small, comforting light in the back of your mind. Let the silence of the fields, the whisper of the wind, and the soft hush of distant waves carry you deeper and deeper into quiet. You are safe beside the hearth. Pot is warm. The night is kind. And somewhere in the far reaches of time, the kitchens of the Middle Ages go on simmering softly, as you let yourself drift, gently and completely into sleep.